Shalom, everyone, and welcome to this part 3 of our lessons on the distinction between miracles and sorcery or magic. Today, we're going to be talking about two subjects that are seen as Kabbalistic in one way or another. One is the visiting of grave sites of tzadikim, or previous rabbis that are considered to be tzadikim, righteous people. And also uh, this same kind of visit or kind of a connection from the dark side called consulting the dead. And we're going to see how these two differ with the approach that is given from the Kabbalah point of view, and why is the other side considered, tuma, or darkness, or a way to connect with the soul of the deceased in an impure way. And we're going to see that they differ greatly, and we're going to see also how we can connect, how we can actually do that as well in a way that is kosher, a way that is from the side of the light and not the darkness. So we're going to see the whole idea of remembering the tzadik, why we visit the gravesite of these ancient rabbis or recently died or recently dead rabbis that are considered tzaddikim. So meet me after the introduction, and we're going to start right away with this lesson, which I think is very interesting. And in some point, I'm gonna give you my personal, and I think, in my opinion, the best approach to do this kind of connection. So I'll see you after the introduction, and we will start the lesson. Welcome back. So the visiting of the gravesite of tzaddikim, of righteous people, it's been practiced for many years, for hundreds of years actually. And in what we call pagan or modern societies, we're going to find that there's all a parallel, but it's considered, from the dark side. One of those you can find in Latin America, for example, the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, in which people go to the gravesite and bring food and everything in order to share with the dead. And there are other places in the world that the same thing is done. The holiday of Halloween for the pagans, it's a day in which they believe that the dead were coming out of the grave, and they needed to do this kind of like feasting and leave kind of like gifts for the dead, so the dead would not haunt them and things like that. And yet today, in modern societies, we see that people are practicing that in a way that is like a big thing. The kids are involved in it. Most of the time, it's all about it's sold for kids to dress as monsters or the different characters that have nothing to do with spirituality, but in most cases demonic forces. And this also is celebrated in certain Christian uh, branches. For example, Catholicism has the All Saints Day, in which there's a parallel between the holiday of Halloween or Hallows Eve, which is a pagan European holiday, and it was adopted by the church and then brought to the Americas, by the church in that sense. But not the Protestant church. They didn't bring that. They didn't have that until the Catholic Church started using that pagan holiday and converted it into a Catholic holiday by calling it the All Saints Day. Now, what we're going to be talking about the Kabbalistic approach of visiting the grave of a tzadik. And when we go to a grave of a tzadik, according to the Kabbalists, we're there in order to connect to the light that soul represented while that person was alive. And the contrary, the pagans' approach is in order to consult, in order to have some kind of connection like if they were still alive. So they're still feeding what in certain teachings are called the astral body, which is the animal soul that needs to feed on emotions and things like that. So they're still feeding that, and that's what we call the ghost of a person. When we say that a place is haunted, it's because being fed by the fear of people and things like that. And that part of the soul of the dead doesn't pass on to a next level or dissipates like it's supposed to do, because it is attached by these desires of human beings to be there and to desire that this person was still or continues to be around them. So that's something that we need to be careful, because when we do this from the Kabbalistic and Jewish point of view, we're not looking into feeding that ghost. We're actually connecting to something higher. Okay? And I want you to keep in mind that this is based on Devarim 18:11, Deuteronomy 18:11, where describing the forbidden practice of necromancy is actually described and given. Now, when we remember the righteous souls, or we visit the graveside of a righteous person, tzadik, this is a positive and a holy remembrance, and invoking the memory and the merit of the tzadikim. In Kabbalah and also in Jewish tradition, visiting the gravesites of tzadikim carries a very deep spiritual meaning. It is not about worshiping the dead, but about connecting to the light of their soul that still shines in the world. And we're going to go through the reasons of why that happened. And I'm going to give you a personal note. I struggled with this when it was presented to me when I was a novice, a student, because I thought this is like worshiping the dead. This is not different than what the pagans do and things like that. But then when I saw the different approach and the difference in connection, that's when I started seeing that it's definitely something that has nothing to do with the dead body. Let's put it that way, right? So one of the things is that, or one of the teachings that the sages give us about visiting the gravesite or remembering the soul of the tzaddikim, is that the soul of the tzaddikim remain present. The Zohar teaches us that the righteous, even after their passing, are called alive. Their spiritual essence does not disappear. It becomes more expansive. By going to their resting place, one can align with their merit and spiritual radiance. So you connect with these merits, with this representation of light that soul was and is at that moment when they were alive, and also when they're dead. when their body's dead. Let's put it that way, because the soul still lives on. The Etz Chaim, the Tree of Life, in Shar HaNekudim, we're going to find that there it is explained that the soul of a tzaddik leaves an imprint, a reshimu, in the world, especially where the body rests. That spot becomes like a spiritual gate. So the key word is gate. It's a gate. It's an opening. So where the body rests, it's not considered that the body is, or the gravesite is the gate itself. It's the soul. It's the last place where that person actually did something, or something was done to the body of that person. And because of the mental and emotional closeness that a person feels when they visit that gravesite, it is easier to connect with the spiritual. It's using your mental and emotional capacities and the physical approach of your body to the gravesite. And now you're using all these levels in order to connect to the higher level, which is the soul, the tzaddikim. Now, also, the gravesite is considered a place of prayer and intercession. People say at the gravesite to the tzadik, but throughout their merit before Hashem, they pray in the gravesite, and when they pray, they usually say the name of the tzaddik that is buried there. Then they go, in the name of Rabbi Nachman, I ask you, this and that. And this is where I was struggling a lot, because this is the same as the Catholic Church asking saints to intercede for them, and I struggle with that. But just as the life of a tzaddik could, in the life of a tzaddik, the tzaddik can pray for you and intercede for others, so too after death the tzaddik soul advocates before the throne of glory. So there's some similitude here. But we're going to see later as we read the Zohar how this is different. It's like we're praying in the name of this person or in the name of this rabbi, but in reality, when you really look deep inside, it's not. We're just connecting to some degree of the light that this person represented while they were still alive. The other one is strengthening personal teshuvah. So Kabbalists say that the awe of standing at a tzaddik's grave helps one awaken humility and repentance, teshuvah. In Shar HaKavanot, the Ari, when he's talking about Tisha B'Av, he instructed his disciples to visit the graves of the tzaddikim, particularly during Elul and before Rosh Hashanah, to awaken mercy from heaven. And it's because the tzaddik is considered a pillar of the world. The tzaddik is considered mercy in the world. Without the mercy, without the sweetening of the judgment by the mercy of the soul of the tzaddikim, the world will not stand. And there's a teaching that said that there's a certain amount of tzaddikim in the world, right? The secret tzaddikim, in order for the Creator not to destroy the world. It's because these souls incarnated bring mercy to the physical realm. Also, it is said that these graves are channels of blessing. According to Kabbalah, the grave of a tzaddik has a shefa, a channel of divine flow. The tzaddik becomes a conduit of blessing, drawing down spiritual energy to those who connect in purity. Remember, you're not there to ask questions to the dead person and ask them, how should I do this and that? It's a place of prayer, okay? Not a place of request for personal things. So you want to receive or to connect to this channel of light that this person while they were living, and also their body, when the body died, still kept a channel of light that people can connect to. The other one is mystical rectification, tikkun. The connection to the tzadik assists in tikkun hanefesh, the rectification of the soul. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in Likutei Moharan, he thought that coming to a tzadik's grave and giving charity there and reciting psalms can break harsh decrees and bring healing to the soul. And this is something that can be practiced not only in the graveside of a tzaddik, but if you are the kind of people that are always paying attention to the day when a rabbi or a tzaddik was born, when a tzaddik died, those days, like Hilulah and things like that we call, those days are also gates in which we can connect to the force or the light that person represented while they were incarnated. In the teachings, Rabbi Nachman said, "No, when a person comes to the grave of the tzaddik and gives charity there and recites several chapters of Tehillim, the tzaddik does a great kindness for the departed one, and for the visitor, and he breaks harsh decree from upon him." So this is kind of like a segula, kind of like remedy for people that have certain problems and things like that. We're not there to ask, but we're there, like I said, to pray. And in this case, I think it depends how you do the approach. What is your kavanah? What is your intention, right? So Kabbalists visit the gravesites of tzaddikim because those places are not about death, but about living channels of light, mercy, and intercession. These places awaken inspiration, repentance, and closeness to God through the merit of the righteous person. Now, so it's very important to understand that they're living channels of light, mercy, and intercession. And the word living is important, right? Because in Kabbalah we teach that death is the absence of light within the vessel. Although there's a very minimum light, right? And in Kabbalah we teach that a person can be alive, but because how they live their life, their disconnection with spirituality, that person, even when they're alive, they're considered dead. However, when a person incarnates and is connected with the light, when they die, when their body dies, their body is considered to be dead, but even when they're dead, the person is considered to be still alive. And then we talk about mercy and intercession, which is the representation of the tzaddik, right? Tzaddik is basically a representation of mercy. And that's something that we need to keep in mind, right? Now, in the Zohar, we're going to find some references to the graves of the tzaddik, and in Zohar, volume 3, page 71b, says the righteous, even when they're passing, are called alive and they intercede for the world. So why do we think that these tzaddikim actually intercede for us? And it's because they become a vessel that is all about giving, and that's what we need to understand. This is our goal. The goal is for us to become these givers, right? We receive in order to give. Kabbalah, to receive, right? We're learning how to receive the light in the proper way so we will be able then to share that light, right? And the tzadikim have actually learned how to receive the light and how to share it with the rest of the world. And this is why they represent mercy. And this is why the world basically stands because of their presence. And that's why their burial sites are considered places where, yes, there is a dead body there, but there's also a gate of light there. They're considered, alive. Also, the Zohar tells us that visiting the burial place of a tzaddikim arouses mercy because their souls are bound to the higher worlds. So when a tzaddikim is bound to a higher world, meaning that they're in a different level. They're in that level that we may call tiferet, in which they receive in order to give. And when they die, they are still considered, to be that kind of basically channel, conduit, or vessel. Now, the Ari on Shahar Kabanot, as we mentioned, he instructed his students to visit the graves of the tzaddikim, right? And also in the teachings of the Ari, we find that he was teaching that every soul leaves an imprint, right? So it's the same thing as when the light enters the vessel and then leaves the vessel. For those who study, Kabbalah, intermediate Kabbalah, it leaves a reshimo, an imprint, a memory. So that's exactly what the tzaddikim do when they're here. They leave a memory of the light. They leave an imprint of the light in the physical realm. So what we say is that what Rabbi Nachman and what the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria are telling us, they're also supported by the Zohar, right? There's a teaching that is called, that which is called Torah, the Chavei, a bundle of life, meaning Malchut, which is called Zor HaChaim, is in the world of Bria. Therefore, this dwelling, which is Bria, is called Torah de Chavei. And why is this important? Let's go and see, why am I reading this? And we're gonna use Sefaria for that. So in Zohar Harimot 44, it says, Rabbi Isaac said, happy are the righteous in the world and in the next, because they are altogether holy. Their body is holy, their soul is holy, their spirit is holy, their super soul is holy of holiest. These are three grandes indissolubly united. If a man does well with his soul, the nefesh, there descends upon him a certain crown called spirit, ruach, which steers him to a deeper contemplation of the laws of the Holy King. If he does well with this spirit, he is invested with a noble holy crown called supernal soul, neshama, which can contemplate all. So now you see how these tzaddikim actually are in a different level, and what are we really connecting. So we're not connecting to the nefesh, we're not even connecting to the ruach, we're connecting to the neshama of that soul, right? And then he says, that God has made three abodes for the righteous. One is for the souls of the righteous, which have not yet left the world and are still here. And when the world is in need of mercy and the living afflicts themselves, these pray for mankind and go and inform those that sleep in Hebron, who, being thus awakened, go into the terrestrial paradise where are the souls of the righteous in their crowns of light, and take counsel of them and decide what shall be. And God carries out their desire and has pity in the world. So this is the intersection, right, between the living tzaddikim and also those who are considered to be sleeping. Now, these souls of righteous are in the world to protect the living and know their troubles, and these are they whom the companion said that the dead knows the sorrows of the world and the punishment of the wicked. The second realm belongs to the terrestrial paradise. In it, God has made excellent chambers after the pattern of those of this world and of the celestial world, and palaces of two colors without numbers, and sweet-smelling herbs that grow afresh every day. And that place abides that which is called the spirit of the righteous, right? Each one being clad in a precious garment after the pattern of this world and in the upper world. So here is, something very interesting. It's telling you, that this world is kind of like a parallel of this world. It's in the likeness of this world. So basically, it's like a copy, or maybe this word is a copy of that word. The third grade is that holy celestial abode, which is called the bundle of the living, and this is what we call here, right? That's which is called, Serora de Chai, the bundle of life. This means, that this is Mahut, as I mentioned, which is called Soro HaChaim, and this is the Mahut in the world of Bria. You got Asya, Yetzirah, and Bria. These three words, and then Atzilu, which Atzilu is the spiritual high connected world, close to God, right? Therefore, this dwelling, which is Bria, is called bundle of life, the Sorah de Chavei, right? The bundle of the living, where that holy superior grade called the super soul, remember the neshama, regales itself with the supernal lights. Now we have learned that when the world requires mercy and those righteous ones take note of it, that soul of theirs which is in the world to shield mankind flits about the world to tell the spirit, and the spirit ascends and tells the supernal soul, the neshama, right? Meaning the nefesh, the ruach, go to that level of the neshama, and this tells the Holy One, blessed be He. Then God has pity on the world, and the reverse process take place. The super soul telling the spirit, and the spirit the soul. And when the world requires mercy, the living go and inform the spirits of the righteous and weep over their graves, in order that soul may cleave to soul. And the souls of the righteous then come together and go and inform the sleepers of Hebron of the sorrows of the world. And then all enter the gateway of paradise and inform the spirit, and those spirits which are crowned in paradise like celestial angels join them and inform the supernal soul, neshama, right? And this informs the Holy One, blessed be He, and God has mercy in the world for their sakes. And regarding this, Solomon said, wherefore I praise the dead which are already dead more than the living that are still alive. So this is something that we need to understand, and this is why Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and also in the writings of the Luriani Kabbalah, we have this idea of these teachers actually telling their students, that they can visit the graves and have some kind of a connection there with okay, so what we're going to talk here now is about, let me see where I have the about consulting the dead. So we're going to see now the difference. So we're going to talk about consulting the dead now. While Doresh El Hameitim, consulting the dead, is forbidden in the Torah, it became specially emphasized in Kabbalah that this practice is spiritually dangerous and off limits. So The Torah source for this, it's Devarim 18 verses 10, 11. Ramban on Avodah Zarah explains necromancy involves summoning the dead to seek answers, and it is a severe prohibition. As it is said, let no one be found among you who consigns a son or daughter to the fire, or who is an augur, a soothsayer, a diviner, sorcerer, or who casts spells, a one who consults ghost or familiar spirit, a one who inquires of the dead. So these last, the two, we're gonna see, that he mentioned, Doresh El Hamating, the one who inquires the dead, one who asks questions to the dead, right? And you're gonna see that this is basically like a way of forcing this to happen. And there's a story of King Saul doing this, and it brought basically damnation to his kingdom when he did that, because he brought back the spirit of a dead prophet, and that's basically forbidden. That wasn't supposed to be done that way. He was supposed to connect to the soul and not force it, to give answer. Connect to the soul, and this soul will then, connect him with a higher source and have, the answers or the clarity that he needed. Now, the Kabbalistic position for this type of practices come from the Zohar. Zohar said those who awaken the dead improperly cause spiritual defilement and strengthen the Sitra Achra. So when you do this, you don't even know if you're really contacting the dead. Maybe what you're doing is you're contacting a demonic force that is taking the form of that deceased person, and it's not necessarily the person itself or the soul, the person itself. Maybe that person has already passed, their soul has ascended to heaven, or to the heavens, and it's in a different level of spirituality, but in your desire to have some kind of answer from the dead person, you are contacting a demonic force that takes the form of that person. In Shahar Gilgulin, Rabbi Chaim Vitar, recording the Ari, says that certain souls are disturbed by being called down. This can damage both the living and the dead. So once a soul are in a process, just when we're living, we're in the process of correcting ourselves in order to learn how to receive the life in a non-egoistic way. Our work doesn't finish here. Our spiritual development and evolution doesn't end when we die. We continue. And when a person that is in that kind of evolution, spiritual evolution after their death, is ascending, and then a person from down here forces that soul basically to come back down to ask for questions, you're breaking the process. You are not supposed to do that. This is as people ascend, we're supposed to ascend with them. We're not supposed to bring them down. So this is why it is considered a negative action, because you're not letting the process of evolution of spirituality and of the soul to continue. In Etz Chaim, the book explains that the Reshimo, which is the spiritual imprint that a soul lives in the world, that Reshimo of a soul remains, but is not to be manipulated for guidance. Okay, so even though the imprint is there, you're not supposed to use that in order for you to get what you want, certain answers or anything like that. Remember, when we are in this world, we're gonna find challenges, and these challenges are not gonna be so easy. So we're not gonna have a clear solution in our mind. But that doesn't mean that we need to force these souls to give us an answer. That's not how it goes. we're supposed to find our own way to that answer without forcing. There's no coercion in spirituality. That's a rule. It's a law. Every time you break that law, there's consequences. So, but you can actually connect. How you connect, I'm going to talk about it, which is my favorite way to connect to these forces without being forcing anything. In fact, I consider that to be the most proper and probably the easier way to connect to the soul of a tzaddik. Now, the modern, let me talk a little bit about some of the issues that may happen, if, or the negative things that can happen when you do this kind of coercing a soul. Impure souls cling to the practitioner. So sometimes, and we're going to talk about this in our next class, sometimes, and probably most of the times, when a person is coercing a soul in order to get an answer, what is happening is that rather than communicating with the desired righteous soul, a person engaging in necromancy risks attracting and attaching an impure soul to themselves. This can amplify a person's evil tendencies, and the impure soul influences them to commit further transgressions. Like I was talking about before, you might be connecting not even probably to that soul, but to a demonic force. And we're going to talk about this in more in depth on our next class, which is it's going to be kind of creepy in the sense, because we're going to be talking about possessions, basically. A spiritual attachment, an ibur, occurs. The Arizal explained that a person's sins can cause a bad soul to become an accessory or spiritual parasite clinging to the individual, inciting them to commit more sins. So these ibur, these souls that are around you, they make you feel angry, they make you do bad stuff, they make you commit all kinds of transgressions because they feed from that negative energy. Like I mentioned, sometimes these people that are in the graveside, there's other graves around you, and you don't know who were those people, right? And some of those souls that are there still are still going around because they haven't passed on yet. And there's a soul, which is a soul that is closest to the body. It's like a shadow of the body. It wants to go back to the body, wants to be alive again, and sometimes they attach to people because they feed from that person's astral energy, and in order to do that, they feed from the emotions and things like that. So people that go to gravesites and not aware, and they don't protect themselves properly, sometimes they feel like drained, and their energy feels drained because these souls are basically like vampires, parasites of energy, and that's what happened. So that's why you have to be careful when you go to a gravesite and you're not ready. Make sure you go with the intention to pray. Make sure you go to the intention to connect to the light, and not to ask questions or ask for favors and things like that. The integrity of the living soul is corrupted. The soul of the deceased is not meant to be recalled to serve the whims of the living. That's what happened to King Saul, right? To do so with impure methods is a corruption of the spiritual process. A person involved in necromancy does not communicate with the true spirit of the dead, but instead becomes entangled with lower dark forces. I guess we already explained that, right? You might be, instead of connecting with the soul of the deceased, you might be connecting with demonic forces. So there are modern parallels of consulting the dead. We see examples in the Bible, especially King Saul, right? Using a witch basically to bring back the soul of a prophet to ask a question, instead of him connecting and doing things the right way, like it's supposed to be. And connecting to the light of that prophet, and in that way getting clarity instead of forcing an answer to his question. So modern parallels that modern Kabbalists reject, and this has been in the last 200 to 300 years, it has been they have become very famous, especially with the New Age movement and the spiritist movement and things like that. So today's form of consulting that there appears in seances and spiritism, which is contacting the dead through mediums, automatic writing and channeling, which is messages from deceased, occult necromancy in Hermetic or New Age circles. There's also, we're not gonna be touching that in here, but in Hermetic circles, we're gonna also find that they connect to demonic forces, and they call it, that these are spirit of times of Enochian magic and things like that, and those are demonic forces, as well, and they fall into that level of where people that are trying to consult the dead are basically connecting to those demonic forces. From a Kabbalist standpoint, these are considered Asur, forbidden, because they seek information, power by forcing souls into communication. Even if you know the name of a demon, right? Let's go to Hermetic Kabbalah, and you summon that demon, you're summoning that demon by force. And it's not gonna come to you without asking you for a payment. So think about that. Such acts blur into kishuv, sorcery, bringing impurity to ma. They are modern expressions of Doresh el Hametim, contacting the dead, consulting the dead. Now the permitted alternatives: Zikaron Tzaddikim. That's the preferred alternative, right? Instead of necromancy, Kabbalists emphasize visiting the tzadikim's grave for inspiration, no consultation, praying to Hashem in their merit, not to them. And I highlighted this one, which because it's I think the safest and my favorite way to connect to the soul of the tzaddikim, learning their Torah as a true way to connect with their soul's light. So if you want to connect to the soul of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, you don't have to visit his gravesite. You can get a book and study his teachings, and you can connect to his light. For example, I love the teachings of the Abir Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov Abu Haseira, and what I do is I buy books that have his teachings, and as I read this, it's like if I was learning from him, and I try through the books to connect with him. In fact, that's what most Kabbalists do. They don't have the luxury of living in a place where they can visit the graves of the tzaddikim, but they connect through the teachings. In the Zohar, when we read the Zohar, we're connecting to the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. When we study the Talmud, we are connecting to the lights of all these sages that live in the past, and by studying and seeing their different opinions of things, and laws and commandments, and all that. So that's a really good way to connect to the soul of the tzaddikim, by studying their teachings. Rabbi Chaim Vital writes in Shar HaKavanot that the Ari himself will go to the graves of tzaddikim not to ask them for prophecy, but to awaken divine mercy through their merit. So basically, it was some mode of asking them for intercession for the living. Now, learning their Torah as a true way as the true way to connect with their souls of light. That's my favorite way to connect with the tzadikim. My preferred one. Doesn't have to be yours. If you want to visit the grave of tzadikim, go ahead. Just remember, you're not there to ask favors. You're there to connect to the soul. Okay? So Kabbalists across the generations have rejected necromancy, whether it is ancient necromancy or modern necromancy. And it is considered asur. Asur means that is harmful, is prohibited. The holy path is not consulting the dead, but remembering the righteous. And by aligning yourself with their teachings, merit, and the light that they represented, and the imprint of the light that they left here. Now, before we continue, I'm gonna tell you why, and this is, I'm gonna add a personal note in here, right? This is why I myself, like I say, I struggle with this because I consider, there's so many parallels with what the Catholic Church does, and for a person like me coming from a family that has Catholic background and things like that, I struggle because it's like going back to it. But then when you study deep, you go like, there's a difference in here. In there are prayers to the saints. Here we're not praying to the saints. We are connecting to the light that person represented, and we're not putting God on the side. We're not acting, or we're not asking that person to be basically like the middleman. It's like we are using that light that that person brought to the world as a chariot to connect. So that's why the zohar is so important, because the zohar, when it was written, it has all these different rabbis, especially Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and in the form of a tale, they're telling us different secrets, and in the form of stories, right? And as we study this, we're connecting through these actions that are described in the Zohar to the different levels of the soul. And what soul we're talking about? We're not talking about the soul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We're not talking about the soul of all the Kabbalists that came later or were before. We're talking about the collective soul. So even though we're trying to connect to, let's say, like I mentioned, Rabbi Yaakov Abu Hatzeira, through the study of his teachings are not new within the circles of the Kabbalists. His teachings are basically a repetition or exposition of what he learned and what was also revealed to him. So if it was something revealed to him, and now we are in a process of studying these teachings from him, we're connecting through him, meaning in his name, to the collective soul, to the all-encompassing light that is our soul, or the soul of Adam Harishon, the first Adam, right? That broke into pieces. So basically by doing that, we're connecting to the light of this tzadik, but this light of the tzadik, like I mentioned, there are different levels, nefesh, ruach, neshama. The neshama is connected to the bigger neshama, which is the neshama of the whole humanity. And this is how we attain clarity, we attain inspiration. We're not consulting to ask for answer, but we are there to seek basically our own answer. Our soul is part of that soul. So we're not asking that soul to give us the answer. We're connecting to the answer. It's like connecting to a Wi-Fi, to talking modern times. So if you're disconnected, there's no information from the internet that you're gonna get. But once you connect, you have access to all that. But you connect through what? Through modem, right? You connect through a system here, and that system here is very different than the system that the neighbor has, or a different provider and things like that. Even though they're a different provider, they connect to the same thing, the internet, right? So that's how you need to see it, to give you kind of like a modern example. So connecting to a tzadik soul through their Torah. How can we do that? The soul extends through Torah teachings. In the Zohar, we're gonna find that it says, that when a tzadik departs, he's found in all the worlds more than in his lifetime. And we read, how his soul actually, these all different levels of the tzadik connect right to the higher realm. His body's gone, but his Torah and teachings are vessels that carry his or her neshama. Now, Rabbi Chaim Vitar in Shar HaGilgulim, as we read, right, explains that the words of a tzaddik contains parts of his soul, and learning them creates a direct bond with him. So that's why it's important to read the Zohar. That's why it's important to study from other Kabbalist books, right? Now, when you study, that equals to cleaving to the soul. The Arizal, he thought that when you learn from the writings of a tzaddik, your soul aligns with his spiritual root, right? It's just like the Zohar is saying, right? And you actually receive from his hashpa'ah, spiritual flow. Now, Hasidic sources like the Tanya and Iger HaKodesh will tell us that the true life of a tzaddik is not his physical presence, but the emunah, awe, and Torah that he transmits. Now, connecting to the soul of a tzaddik through study is safer than necromancy. Unlike Doresh El Hamitin, forbidden necromancy, right? Which tries to pull the soul downward, learning the Torah of the tzaddik raises you upward into the higher realm. This is why Kabbalists emphasize Zikaron Tzaddikim through study, not sense, right? So you study and you remember, the tzadik, and through study his teachings or her teachings, you are doing that, not by trying to contact the dead soul. Now, how we connect, which is the practical advice I'm gonna give you, is learn the Torah of the tzaddik and do with humility and kavanah, meaning with intention. Don't go to a book and try to study because you want to be as wise as this tzaddik. Don't do that. That's called knowledge. You want to study because you want to connect with the light, and by doing this, you're going to bring mercy to the world. That should be your intention. Always remember in front of who you're standing. You're standing in front of the Hakadosh Baruch Hu, right? Not in front of your ego, right? You're standing in front of the Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the blessed be He. You mentioned the name of the rabbi before the study, right? Let's say in the name of Rabbi Nachman, the Rebbe of Rashbi, I'm gonna start this study. May this study, connect me with the higher realms and things like that, But it's not the person connecting you, the person that is dead. Apply his teachings in daily life. This is what is going to connect you the most. It makes you a living extension of this tzadik soul. You want to connect to the tzaddikim? Go ahead, go to the graves if you want to, but if you don't put the teachings of this tzaddik into practice, your approach is as dead as the body of the tzaddik that you're visiting. You want to be as alive as the soul of the tzaddik, and you do that by becoming a vessel of the teachings of the tzaddik. And this is why, for me, this is my preferred method of connecting to tzaddik. And probably the preferred method of a lot of people, because we don't have the luxury of having grave sites of tzaddikim around us, right? So in short, the deepest connection to a tzaddik soul is not at his grave, and certainly not through forbidden necromancy, but through learning and living his Torah. Each word is a spark of his eternal light, and by studying it, you bind your soul to his. So I hope you understand that. Now let's do a little recap, and in order to finish, and the differences between Zikaron Tzaddikim and Doresh El Hametim. So in Doresh El Hametim, which is forbidden, right? The source is one who inquires of the dead, right? While in the permitted one, which is the remembrance of the tzadikim, the memory of the righteous is for a blessing. The action, it is attempting to consult the dead to receive answers or prophecy from them. In remembering the tzadik, remembering and learning the Torah of the tzadik, praying to Hashem in their merit. The association is with the Sitra Achra, the other side, the dark side, brings impurity and disturbs the soul of the dead. While when you remember the tzadik, is with holiness, brings mercy and merit upon both the living and the departed. The language used in Doresh Hametim, Doresh equals to demanding, forcing, compelling, right? The language in remembering the neshamot of the tzadikim is Zikaron. Zikaron means recalling, honoring, cleaving, remembering. The result is a forbidden connection to impure forces, damage to the soul when you do the Doresh Hametim, and the result for Zikaron Neshamot Tzaddikim is connection to the soul of the tzadik, to the flow of light and blessing. And the approach is also very important to remember. You pulling a soul downward, disturbing the higher world when you are doing the Doresh Hametim. When it comes to the Zikaron Neshamot Tzaddikim, you're bonding through Torah study, rising upward to the source of light. And just remember, I'm going to emphasize before we finish, when you practice the forbidden form of connecting to the dead, impure souls cling to the practitioner, a spiritual attachment rebirth can occur, and the integrity of the living soul is corrupted. So I hope this lesson has been informational, that you have learned something new. I don't see a lot of things in YouTube that talk about this. I have started doing this because when I started writing my last book of The Secrets of the Prayer of Anna Bekoach, which if you want to buy the book, it's in the description below this video. I saw that there were a lot of people using the 42 names of God and the 72 names of God in order to do certain activities that look and sounded more like magic rather than connecting to the light. So I decided to write inside the book about the difference between a nes and kishuf, right? Miracles and sorcery or magic. But then, there was so much information that I couldn't put all the information into the book. So I decided, what if instead of putting it in a book, I make videos of each of these things. In that way, people can know the difference when they're using different names of God and permutations and the 72 names of God, the 42 letter name of God. And that way they know the difference. They can discern, am I doing this the proper way? Am I bringing light to my life? Or am I basically bringing an illusion and disappointment to my life because I'm using basically what is called magic? So these videos are basically a result of that. And like I said, the book on the 42 letter name of God are in the description. In that book, I know some people have asked me, can you show some of the pages of the book? Let me see if I can reach out without other books falling. But when you go to that book, you're gonna find different exercises and things like that, and you're gonna find, you know, everything broken down by, I will go here, verse by verse, and with the letters and everything. And as you advance in this, then you're gonna go through all the angels and know what all the angels that each letter represent, it's all about, and the different meditations that you can do with those names. And also we're gonna be discussing also in this book the Tikkun HaNefesh. It's not the same Tikkun HaNefesh that you're accustomed to see, you know, from Kabbalah Center or things like that. It's a different one, similar but a little more. It's an exercise that is gonna take you a little more time, but it has a little more definite, and you're gonna see that. So, anyways, I hope you have had a great lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson, which is going to be spirit possessions and inspired speech by tzadikim. So these two lessons are related. Remember, we talked about spirit possession, you know, and here we're gonna see difference between inspired speech and spirit possession. And I'll see you in the next lesson. Shalom, and have a great week.